lovers. You're tuned in to Poetics, and I am so glad you're here for another deep dive into the world of verse. For those just joining us, I'm Tamara Rockwood, and when I'm not chatting with you here, I'm running Bainbridge Island Press with my husband Ben, surrounded by the misty magic of Pacific Northwest. You know, between recording these episodes and working with our poets, I've been reflecting on what an incredible journey this has been. Since we opened our doors coming up on 2 years ago, we've had the joy of bringing 9 collections into the world, each one its own universe of voice and vision. We've been enjoying ourselves all this time by hosting intimate poetry readings or hosting our booth at bustling book festivals. Overall, the energy and creativity in the poetry community never fails to inspire me. So grab that cup of coffee or tea, find your favorite listening spot, and let's explore today's poetic adventure together. You're listening to Poetics. So today we are diving into the fascinating world of Borges, one of the most incredible writers of the 20th century. Jorge Luis Borges was born in Argentina, and he was a true literary polymath who grew up in a bilingual household. He read English before Spanish. He just devoured books. His family moved to Switzerland, and I think he moved to Switzerland with his family, and they traveled everywhere, and then he went back to Argentina and began writing his poetry. What's incredible is that this master of magical realism, he started writing very young, and he never looked back. That was his love, and he knew it from the beginning. There is a term called Borgesian, I think it's Borgesian, to describe his enchanting world, and it's similar to if we say something is Kafkaesque. Borges is truly special in how he transformed literature through creating stories that were like these beautiful, beautiful puzzles filled with mazes and puzzles and mirrors and libraries. And he loved playing with the idea that we might all be characters in someone else's dream. So today we have Ben Rockwood, and he is reading and analyzing Borges.
The Moon by Jorge Luis Borges. The story goes that in those far-off times when every sort of thing was taking place, things real, imaginary, dubious things, a man thought up a plan that would embrace the universe entire and in just one book. Relentlessly spurred on by this vast notion, he brought off the ambitious manuscript, polishing the final verse with its deep emotion. All set to offer thanks to his good fortune, he happened to look up, and none too soon beheld a glowing disk in the upper air. The one thing he'd left out, the moon. The story I have told, although made up, could very well symbolize the plight of those of us who cultivate the craft of turning our lives into the words we write. The essential thing is what we always miss. From this law no one is immune, nor will the account be an exception of my protracted dealings with the moon. Where I saw it first I do not know, whether in the other sky that the Greeks tell preceded ours, or one fading afternoon in the patio above the fig tree in the well. As is well known, this changing life of ours may incidentally seem ever so fair, and so it was on evenings spent with her when the moon was ours alone to share. More than the moons of the night, there came to mind moons that I have found in verse. The weirdly haunting dragon moon that chills us in the ballad, and Quavado's blood-stained moon, fully as daunting. In the book he wrote, full of all the wildest wonderings and atrocious jubilation, John tells of a bloody scarlet moon. There are other silver moons for consolation. Pythagoras, of old tradition holds, used to write his verse in blood on a mirror. Men looked at its reflection in the moons, hoping thus to make his meaning clearer. In a certain ironclad wood is said to dwell a giant wolf, whose fate will be to slay the moon, once he has knocked it from the sky in the red dawning of the final day. This is well known throughout the prophetic North, as also that on that day, as all hope fails, the sea of all the world should be infested by a ship built solely out of dead men's nails. When in Geneva or Zurich the fates decreed that I should be a poet, one of the few, I set myself a secret obligation to define the moon, as would-be poets do. Working away with studious resolve, I ran throughout my modest variations, terrified that my moonstruck friend Legiones would leave no sand or amber for my creations. The moons that shed their silver on my lines were moons of ivory, smokiness, or snow. Needless to say, no typesetter ever saw the faintest trace of their transcendent glow. I was convinced that, like the red-hot atom of paradise, the poem alone may claim to bestow on everything within its reach its uniquely fitting, never yet heard of name. Aristo holds that in the fickle moon dwell dreams that slither throughout our fingers here, all time that's lost, all things that might have been, or might not have. No difference, it would appear. Apollodorus let me glimpse the threefold shape Diana's magic shadow may assume. Hugo gave me the reaper's golden sickle, and an Irishman his pitch-black tragic moon. And as I dug deep down into that mine of mythic moons, my still unquiet eye happened to catch, shining around the corner, the familiar nightly moon of our own sky. To evoke our satellite there, spring to mind all those lunar cliches like croon and June. The trick, however, is mastering the use of the single modest word. That word is moon. My daring fails, how can I continue to thrust vain images in that pure face? The moon, both unknowable and familiar, disdains my claims to literary grace. The moon, I know, or the letters of its name, were created as a puzzle or a pun, for the human needs to underscore in writing our untold strangeness, many or one. Include it then with symbols that fate or chance bestow upon humankind against the day, sublimely glorious or plain Ajonic, when at least we write its name the one true way. For this week's selection, I chose a poem, a particularly interesting poem that I think resonates a lot with poets themselves, by Borges. Borges is a man of many talents. His primary claim to fame really as a short story writer. If you've never encountered his work before, I highly recommend it. He's an incredible voice in the proud history, the short proud history of both postmodern literature and magical realism, which are both highly correlated, but fantastic short stories. The Library of Babel being one, The Garden of Forking Paths, The Aleph, Borges and I, Labyrinths. The list goes on and on and on. Incredible storyteller, vivid. But I think what you also see in his short story writing is a certain poetic sensibility. There's a rhythm to both the story and to the prose itself. And I've often found that some of the prose writers that excite me the most on deeper inspection turn out to actually be poets, or at least to have a history in writing poetry. A while back, Penguin released 3 books. One was a selection of his short stories, one was a selection of his poems, and the other was a selection of his nonfiction or essays. All 3 are worth having. I've really enjoyed flipping through these. Now, one thing I will notice is that he was from Argentina, and when he wrote, he generally wrote in Spanish. A lot of these were translated. And so, you know, with any translated poetry, the translator always does their very best to sort of make it as elegant as possible. But there's only so much you can do. So one thing you will notice during the reading is there's a couple of places where there's sort of maybe some word choices that are a little strange or odd, or you might have noticed I stumbled over because it just doesn't read as sensibly as one would like, and you kind of do a double take. Is that the word? I think it is. Nevertheless, it still comes through. And you know, some of these are beautiful, and some of these have stories. And so the poems that I enjoy the most of his are the ones that are the most like his short stories. They're sort of ultra compressed short stories, and really convey something to the reader. So I think that anybody who's written or appreciates great writing can understand what he was saying, in that the thing that we overlook tends to often be the most essential thing. And when we really set our eye on that thing and try to make it central, it generally becomes overwhelming when we think of all the other people who have ever written about that thing or expounded on that thing, that it becomes overwhelming and you're almost afraid to write about it. Because what do I have to say that hasn't already been said by somebody else before, and possibly said better? So, you know, it resonates with me. I think it's beautifully written. My real hope here is that if you've never heard of Borges, that you seek him out, learn from him. On YouTube, you can find some of his courses that he did, lectures, very long lectures. He was a wonderfully funny man, and a delight to listen to. I'll sometimes listen to his lectures just to listen to the cadence of his voice, because it's so unique, and a little fatherly, actually. So I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you for the next one.
Okay, that is all for today, poetry friends. If you've enjoyed diving into the world of verse with us, please join us again next time, where we've got more poets to meet, more poems to explore, and more literary adventures to share. Until then, keep reading, keep writing, and keep poetry close to your heart. Thank you for joining POETICS Podcast, where we bring poetry to life, one verse at a time.